5th of July, either Keir Starmer or I will be Prime Minister.
At the time of recording, the 2024 general election was called less than a week ago. The UK faces the prospect of a choice between two major parties forming the next government, while taking a disproportionately large share of seats in the Parliament. But does it need to be like this? The current lack of choice is due to the voting system used to elect MPs to Westminster, first past the post. This has its merits and its drawbacks, which are well known and widely discussed, with many videos and studies talking about this. In UK general elections, the country is split into 650 single-member constituencies, and effectively this means that each election is a combination of hundreds of individual winner-takes-all elections. Today's video discusses an alternative to this system, while retaining characteristics of an electoral system which the British public prefer, like local representation, and the concept of one person, one vote. This video also introduces a new series which models both every election's real results since 1955 and the latest opinion polls leading up to the next election under a system of proportional representation. Please subscribe to join me on this journey to model the history of this country's elections in a much more fair way. In the last general election in 2019, more than a third of the seats were won with candidates who did not win a majority of votes in their constituencies. In England, most seats in this election were won with a majority. This may be because most contests were between the Conservatives and Labour at this election, with the Green Party and the Liberal Democrats only winning 1 and 7 seats respectively. Boris Johnson was also a highly polarising figure in this election. He attracted many traditionally non-Conservative voters in seats which that party won. This effect was particularly strong in England. Far fewer seats were won with a majority in other nations, including the vast majority in Scotland, the majority in Wales, and an overwhelming majority in Northern Ireland. The political landscape in each of these countries is more complex, with national parties being present in Scotland and Wales, and an array of parties from both communities and neither in Northern Ireland. Sheffield Hallam was the seat in England which was won by the lowest vote share. Labour won that seat with slightly over 1/3 of the electorate voting for them, and all other parties' votes equalling almost double Labour's total. The Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives followed closely behind, but in this winner-takes-all scenario, do not gain any representation here. On the other side of the Irish Sea, Belfast South holds the record as the setting of the lowest winning vote share in history. In 2015, the SDLP took the seat with less than a quarter of the vote. This leaves more than 3/4 of voters' wishes unaccounted for. Turning to the overall results, we can immediately see that there are discrepancies between the total percentage of MPs that were elected versus percentage vote share per party. The Liberal Democrats have 3 times as many votes as the SNP, but only win 11 seats compared to the SNP's 48. The Brexit Party, like them or loathe them, gained over 500,000 votes with no representation whatsoever. In Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin wins 6 more seats than Alliance, with a mere 6% higher share of the Northern Irish vote. The spoils, of course, go to the winners, as is often the case in first past the post. The Conservatives in this system win a comfortable majority, with 365 seats, or 56% of the total, which might lead the public to believe that the will of most people in the UK is to have a majority Conservative government. However, the national vote share paints a different picture. The Conservatives did indeed take the highest proportion of votes by a large margin, but this was still well shy of half the total votes at 43.6%, and also very similar to Tony Blair's landslide winning share of 1997. So how many votes per seat did a party need in the last election? It depends on the party. Spreading the 650 seats evenly between 32.5 million votes cast results in approximately 49,000 votes per seat in Parliament. In reality, these are spread less evenly, with a preference towards the largest parties, either across the whole UK or the specific region that regional parties stand in. The Conservatives benefit from this system on a national level, with around 38,000 votes per seat, while the official opposition Labour require 51,000 votes per seat, which is just above the average. The SNP only stand in Scotland, where they win 48 out of 59 seats, and therefore only need 26,000 votes for each of their seats, the lowest of any party. The DUP, the largest party in Northern Ireland in terms of vote share, also need far less than the average votes per seat at 31,000. The Lib Dems stand all over Great Britain and lose out massively in this system, as they need 336,000 votes for each of their 11 seats. Things are even worse for the Greens. They only gain one seat with a national vote of 850,000 people. And worse still for the Brexit Party, whose 500,000 votes fail to gain them any representation at all. How could these elections be made more representative of how the public voted? And which system of proportional representation would be the best for Britain? In 2011, after a coalition of Conservatives and Liberal Democrats took power, there was a referendum on the possible introduction of the alternative vote. This system asks voters to state their top two preferences, and seats which do not immediately have a majority of first preference then go into a runoff of second-choice candidates. This system is used in Australia, but was rejected by Britons multiple times, perhaps due to the added complexity of the ballot paper. The main two parties also campaigned against it, as they benefit greatly from the current system. The British public clearly have a preference for retaining local representation, and the concept of one person, one vote, which some PR systems can lack. In this series of videos, we divide the UK into 102 multi-member constituencies. These regions are allocated a share of the 650 seats in Parliament based on their population. We use a great data source from electoral calculus for all elections dating back 70 years. And this data is divided into constituencies, regions of the UK, and counties. We use these counties mostly based on the traditional counties, but also London divided into its boroughs, and Manchester and the West Midlands divided into 3 regions each. Northern Ireland is counted at large as one individual constituency. All constituencies are elected by the D'Hondt method, which allows individual votes in multi-member constituencies to allocate members more proportionally. Let's take the London Borough of Sutton as an example. In the current Westminster system, Sutton has 2 constituencies. In Sutton and Cheam, the Conservatives are the clear leaders in vote share with 49.98% of the vote, a whisker away from a majority, and giving them this seat. In Carshalton and Wallington, the Conservatives also win, albeit in a much closer race. They are the winner who takes all, with 42.4% of the vote, compared to the Liberal Democrats' 42.1%, around 700 votes less. Across Sutton as a whole, the Conservatives' 46.3% of the vote wins them 100% of the MPs sent to Westminster. This pattern is spread all over the UK when using the current system, favouring different parties in different areas. Now let's make Sutton a multi-member constituency with 2 members rather than 2 separate races, and distribute their seats via D'Hondt-style PR. In this borough, the Conservatives have the highest number of votes and will be allocated the first seat. Then their vote total is halved. Now, the Liberal Democrats have the highest number of votes and are allocated the second seat. As there are only 2 seats, the process is now complete. But in seats with more members, rinse and repeat this process until they're all filled. We can see that the remaining votes for the Liberal Democrats and Conservatives are still both higher than Labour's share, so Sutton would need to have 5 seats in order for Labour to gain representation here. Nonetheless, the members sent to Parliament from this proposed constituency are far more representative of the votes cast. A closed list version of this system is used in Spain, which has constituencies ranging from 1 member apiece in Ceuta and Melilla to 32 in Barcelona and 37 in the Community of Madrid as the largest constituencies. The electoral constituencies follow the traditional provinces of Spain, allowing for multi-member local representation along lines of regional identity. Norway, Sweden and Finland, among many others, use an open list version of this system. Sweden has constituencies ranging from 2 seats in Gotland to 40 seats in Stockholm County. Some countries may also impose a minimum threshold, either nationally or within constituency, at which parties can gain representation, and this is to avoid some more extreme fringe parties getting into Parliament. So what would an electoral map of the UK look like? The very least populated regions with not enough people to be automatically allocated a seat are always allocated 1. This is the case with the Western Isles. Other regions with only 1 seat, and which operate the same as a first-past-the-post electoral constituency, include Argyll and the Borders in Scotland, Powys in Wales, and both Kingston and Kensington and Chelsea in London. In contrast, the largest seats are West Yorkshire with 22 seats, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight with 20, and Essex, Kent, and Northern Ireland at large all have 18 seats. The average number of seats per constituency is 6, like Gwent in Wales, Grampian in Scotland, and Teesside in the northeast of England. Finally, we turn to the full 2019 general election results under proportional representation. In Scotland, first and foremost, we can see that there is more of a spread in the representation of parties elected there. This is particularly true in the Central Belt, where MPs from parties other than the SNP are much more fairly represented. The SNP dominate the seat total in first past the post. In this PR system, there are 7 fewer seats in Scotland due to the way that seats are distributed by population. And the SNP now take half of them on 45% of the vote. The Lib Dems also lose 1 seat, as their support in Scotland is usually concentrated into places like the Highlands and East Fife. The real winners here are Labour and the Conservatives, whose 43% of Scottish votes are better represented in this system. Northern Ireland's 18 seats are distributed quite differently between the two systems, with the 2 largest rival parties collecting most of the seats in first-past-the-post races. In the proportional system, the Ulster Unionists' 12% of the vote would afford them 2 seats rather than none. If we compare the popular vote, the proportional results look much more representative. The 32 London boroughs are split into smaller multi-member constituencies, but allow for more voters' voices to be heard. For example, Labour gets some support in parts of London whose seats are always Conservative, and vice versa in inner London. However, Labour support is so strong in places like Hackney and Lambeth that they take 3 out of 3 seats. Across England, Johnson's Conservatives are very strong, taking the majority of seats in many shire counties. Labour only leads seat totals in more urban and industrial areas, perhaps due to Jeremy Corbyn's limited appeal to the public at the time. The Brexit Party's 2% national vote share translates into 4 seats, 2 in South Yorkshire, 1 in West Yorkshire, and 1 in Newcastle, while the Greens, even in a proportional system, still only manage 1 in East Sussex. As for the Liberal Democrats, who often come second to the Conservatives in seats in the south of England, they pick up many seats there which better reflect their vote share. In Cornwall, all 6 first-past-the-post seats go to the Conservatives, while they're split more equitably in PR. This is also the case in South Yorkshire, where parties other than Labour and the Conservatives break through and gain representation. It's like a higher resolution version of the public vote. Let's look at the national results and what that could mean for a government formation in this electoral system, as well as the impact on the 3 main parties. The Conservatives lose seats, and Labour and the Liberal Democrats gain to get a more accurate share of their popular vote in Parliament. Compare this with the popular vote share shown in the top right of the screen. How much more proportional is this system? Remember the chart showing votes per seat from earlier? Now compare with the county-based proportional system. Retaining geographical representation has made no difference for the huge amount of votes the Greens require for representation. Maybe their support is spread too thin, even for multi-member constituencies. Across the larger parties, there is more even representation between them. It is important to note also that we model how voters cast their ballots in a first-past-the-post system, which is well known for tactical voting and the 2-party system. Perhaps people would behave differently if they knew their vote is more likely to mean representation for their true preference. We aren't going to speculate for too long on what this would mean for the arithmetic in Parliament, only that this time the Conservatives fall slightly short of a majority. Sinn Féin don't take their seats at Westminster, so a bare majority could be reached with 324 seats in the House. Perhaps with former confidence and supply partners, the DUP, and kindred spirits to some, the Brexit or Reform Party, a government may have been formed. It doesn't appear that any progressive alliance could work. Even the most colourful of rainbow coalitions would reach 315 seats. Thank you so much for watching. The link to this work is included in the description, as well as other videos and articles mentioned here. Please consider subscribing to see the rest of this series coming up, including proportional predictions based on the latest opinion polls, and modelling important elections in British history, like 1997 and 2010.